And Vice President JD Vance says the U.S. will walk away from the table unless both Ukraine and Russia agree on a deal.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work.
This coming after Secretary of State Marco Rubio did not attend talks in London between officials from the UK, France, Germany, and Ukraine, as well as the U.S. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is live for us at the White House. And Haley, what are your sources telling you about the prospects of a deal right now?
Yeah, Andrew, well, what we are seeing play out today at the White House is an apparent continued effort to put public pressure on this. President Trump accusing Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy of making what he called inflammatory comments harmful to negotiations amid those efforts to reach a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine that thus far has not come to fruition. The president, who has grown frustrated, writing on Truth Social, quote, "The statement made by Zelenskyy today will do nothing but prolong the killing field, and nobody wants that. We are very close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done." Zelenskyy in recent comments has reiterated that Ukraine will not legally recognize Crimea as Russian territory, a long-held position for Ukraine. Trump maintaining that that is not being asked, and the White House press secretary within the past hour elaborating on the president's comments, putting further pressure on Zelenskyy. Listen.
In order to make a good deal, both sides have to walk away a little bit unhappy. And unfortunately, President Zelenskyy has been trying to litigate this peace negotiation in the press. And that's unacceptable to the president. These should be closed-door negotiations. The president's national security team, his advisors, has exuded significant time, energy, and effort to try to bring this war to an end. The American taxpayer has funded billions of dollars in this effort. And enough is enough. The president's frustrated. His patience is running very thin. He wants to do what's right for the world. He wants to see peace. He wants to see the killing stopped. But you need both sides of the war willing to do that. And unfortunately, President Zelenskyy seems to be moving in the wrong direction.
And as you mentioned, Andrew, this all comes as the U.S. has threatened to move on if it doesn't think an agreement is possible after presenting that peace plan to each side. The White House not offering a specific timeline on this, but as you heard, Vice President JD Vance calling it a fair proposal, suggesting that a final step would be freezing territorial lines, he said, at a level close to where they are, but noted both sides will have to give up territories in his view. Listen.
What I said is the current line, somewhere close to them, is where you're ultimately, I think, going to draw the new lines in the conflict. Now, of course, that means the Ukrainians and the Russians are both going to have to give up some of the territory they currently own. There's going to have to be some territorial swaps. So I wouldn't say the exact lines, but we want the killing to stop. And the only way to really stop the killing is for the armies to both put down their weapons, to freeze this thing, and to get on with the business of actually building a better Russia and a better Ukraine. We're certainly invested in that effort. We hope the Russians and the Ukrainians will meet us halfway.
Now, regional experts we've spoken with, Andrew, believe the administration appears to be prioritizing a deal with Russia in their view. Notably, the president has not commented on Russia's continued attacks in Ukraine. And meanwhile, while Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin later this week, the U.S. did not take part in those talks in London with European counterparts as well as Ukrainians, which are a continuation of talks held in Paris last week, which did include Witkoff and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. However, Special Envoy to Ukraine General Keith Kellogg did meet with the Ukrainians today. Ukraine's foreign minister calling it a, quote, constructive exchange of views on the path to peace. The Ukrainian readout from this meeting says officials reiterated that Ukraine would, quote, defend its principled positions during the negotiations, agreeing to continue the talks. And a source familiar with Ukrainian sentiment tells us that Ukraine feels like they have been doing everything the United States has asked for. Andrew?
All right, Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull for us live. Haley, thank you.